So, a while back I had the pleasure to attend the summer school in linguistics called The Egg, where I met those incredible, brilliant minds who are linguists as well, and I asked them a few questions. So, if you are passionate about linguistics, here is Ask a Linguist.
All right, so...
Oh wait, it's recording already.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't matter. So you can be looking at me, or you can be looking here.
Here, okay.
But not here.
Not here.
Just here. Lean forward. O, lean forward, tego mi brakowało. Kurde, jesteś duży. O. No tak, no dobra. I just said, like, you're huge. I was like, yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, all right.
I just hope I can think of some good answers.
All right, so...
Silence, please.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Wojtek. I study at the University of Wrocław. So I'm doing this PhD thing. And now I'm on my second year of studies.
My name is Ondřej. I study in Prague and in Brno. Yeah, I'm currently a PhD student.
I'm Nuria. Just finished my BA at the University of Cambridge in the UK. Wow. Going on to an MPhil this October.
Also in Cambridge?
Yeah.
My name's Karla.
And where do you study?
I study at Goethe University in Frankfurt. So I'm finishing my MA right now. I'm gonna hand in my MA thesis next week if everything goes well.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's so exciting.
So my name is Danny Bate. I am a PhD student at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm currently in my second year. I think of myself as a linguist, simply because I've been doing linguistics now for quite a few years, ever since. So that's 3 years of undergrad, 1 year of masters, 2 extra years. Getting on for about 6 or 7 years now.
Okay, so which area of linguistics do you specialize in?
I specialize in psycholinguistics with a little sprinkle of semantics and maybe logical formal semantics as well.
I specialize in syntax and semantics, and especially the syntax-semantics interface, which is concerned with how form and meaning interact in language.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in theoretical syntax, or anything to do with syntax.
So what is syntax, semantics, and what is an interface?
Syntax is the study of how phrases and sentences are built up in the language. And semantics is, broadly speaking, the study of meaning.
Oh, to be honest, I don't specialize so much in any area of linguistics.
So my specialism is what we technically call historical syntax. That is looking at syntactic parts of language, so things like word order, and how that develops and changes across time, specifically how it can change in a language or multiple languages.
I have more specialization, but it's more superficial, you know. Okay. So I have cognitive linguistics and corpus linguistics.
Still linguistics.
Yeah, definitely it is.
The syntax-semantics interface is all about how these two modules of grammar then interact, so how changing the form of a sentence, for example, affects its meaning, how different meanings can be incorporated, different structures in a sentence.
Can we make theories that predict kind of cross-linguistic variation from a syntactic perspective, but then can we also see how children acquire those structures? And then really anything to do with that, so things like language change from a syntactic perspective or acquisition perspective, that's also something I'm really interested in.
So my main current specialization is corpus linguistics, and then I'm beginning just with the generative grammar. There I'm on the very beginnings, you know.
Okay. And could you just very quickly say what corpus linguistics is about?
Okay, hard question. The corpus linguistics bases on real language data produced by real language speakers, and analyzes this data by computer methods.
And then other stuff like indirectly related to that, things like computational linguistics or...
Wow, so that's broad.
Yeah, it's pretty broad, but it's kind of all intersects in the same place. So for example, I'm really interested in computational models that take into account cognition and language acquisition. So can we teach computers to acquire, to learn a language, or to learn how a language more or less works in a way that's inspired by how children acquire language, and does that yield better results than if we don't do that? And stuff like that, yeah.
Within my specialism, I really enjoy, and I'm currently trying to do, some reconstruction, which is where we try to piece together and compare languages to work out their ancestor. their ancestor is prehistoric. We've never seen it. We have no evidence for it. That's how old it is. But the idea being that we have no evidence for it. It wasn't written down, but we can reconstruct it.
There you go.
That's what I'm trying to do as part of my PhD. It's the end goal, but yeah, well, I hope I get there.
So you are in your PhD program now. What are you working on?
Okay, currently I'm working especially on like parallel corpora of French and Czech, and there are analyze some language facts, especially the syntax, syntax of concession and conditional clauses.
Oh, okay. So you work both on French and Czech.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, that's cool.
So there's many things that I'm working on, but most importantly my PhD thesis. I'm trying to investigate the effect of grammatical and lexical aspect on the perception of event duration. So basically how grammar influences how you perceive time.
Okay, and what is aspect to anyone who doesn't know? Can you explain it in like under a minute?
Alright, that's gonna be tricky, but it's the way that you perceive things that are happening. So for example, verbs. In English, we don't really have aspect marked, but try to think of a difference between I ate and I was eating, right? One of those things is finished and one of those things is happening. It's
or
like
was happening.
Yeah.
I'm working on principal C effects in German. Principal C effect occurs, for example, in a sentence like, she thinks that Laura is filming a video right now. In this sentence, the pronoun she and the name Laura can't be the same person. So they can't refer to the same person, and that's strongly simplified what is called a principal C effect. And I'm working on German, and I'm doing experimental work on when these effects occur, when pronouns and names can refer to the same person and when they can't.
Principal C is within syntax. So how do you fit semantics into it?
That's an interesting question. So principle C it's a part of syntax, so it's a syntactic principle, at least that's what's generally assumed, but there are also many semantic factors that influence judgments of principle C. So, for example, what happens if you put a context around our sentence, she thinks that Laura is filming a video right now. So would that influence, depending on the context, how this judgment is then made in the sentence? Or what happens if you put different adjectives into a sentence and expand it? Or if you rearrange the parts in the sentence. So these are all not necessarily syntactic factors, but also semantic and pragmatic factors that
and you do experimental work on it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I design experiments in which speakers have to rate sentences.
So I just finished my BA thesis, and that's again another really broad topic, but basically it was primarily on syntax and language acquisition, but I borrowed things from like mathematical linguistics, and I basically tried to see this. So there's a theory called dynamical systems theory, which is basically, it sounds very complex, but it's basically like a theory of how systems in general develop. So systems in like nature, biology, and like cognitive development in general. And then my idea was like, well, let's apply that to language acquisition. So if we can model systems in general, surely we might be able to gain something if we apply that to language acquisition systems. So I apply that to language acquisition from a Chomskyan type of perspective. And then in my BA, I kind of will continue that sort of approach indirectly, and I'm going to look essentially at so there are various proposals in language acquisition that suggest that we acquire structures in a biologically predetermined way. So that, for example, if there's 3 structures, we will acquire one structure in particular first, then it will follow another one, and then a third one, and so forth. And in that particular order across all languages, and then I'm going to try to see whether or not that actually holds cross-linguistically, and whether or not that makes sense from the sort of perspective I take in my BA thesis.
In the world today, we have a massive family of languages. What I mean by family is that they're related to each other in the same way that brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles may be, and they have a common ancestor. This family is quite well known. It's called Indo-European, The name is quite self-explanatory. It stretches from Europe and then all the way over to India. So from Ireland to Bangladesh, excluding, of course, the effects of colonialism in the modern era, where this family has gone even further afield. So I work on this family of languages, and we have a pretty good idea now that they came from one single ancestor that was spoken about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. Not very precise, but that's a good guess. And we have so much good material. We can compare all these related languages to the extent that we can reconstruct something of the parents.
I can see that you're excited.
Yeah, I get quite excited about it as well. It's a huge field. It's an old field as well. This idea is old, but specifically, people have been working on this for some time. So you might have heard of, for example, the brothers Grimm with the fairy tales. Jakob Grimm, one of the two brothers, was also an expert linguist, and he contributed to this idea back in the 19th century. As a result of this age, we have a good idea about its sounds, we have a good idea about its words, but not really how they put those words together.
Okay.
Things like word order, for example, which is where I come in.
Okay, so here's the puzzle.
Here's the puzzle,
Okay.
yeah. What can we reconstruct for the word order, the syntax, the grammar, whatever word you prefer, for this ancient language?
All right.
That's the idea.
Okay, sounds interesting. So, I guess I have to ask you now, because I'm looking forward to the answer. What got you into linguistics in the first place?
Well, I feel like it's a very standard answer. So I was really interested in learning languages. Firstly, I was really interested in English, and then I kind of started learning new languages. So, at school, I learned German, and then I was kind of fiddling between doing something like English philology, which is basically kind of the study of the English language and literature. But that didn't quite sound right, because I like literature, but it's not something I would do at university. There's also other things like translation or text editing and things like that.
I did all of those, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that was also I also didn't feel like I wanted to be a translator or spend 3 years or 4 years just focusing on translation. And then I eventually, like when I was like 15 or 16, and eventually came across that there was something just looking at how language works and how languages vary, and I was like, yeah, that makes much more sense, because I also didn't want to focus on just one language. I also wanted to compare languages between each other, and also like learn more generally like about how language works, how do we process language, just anything to do with language really. So linguistics basically ticked the boxes. But yeah, it kind of came from essentially really liking learning languages, looking at careers and courses that fit that prototype, and then eventually get into one that fits like my idea that I really like languages as opposed to just one. Or
All right, that's so fascinating. Yeah, it really is. Where are you originally from?
I probably should have mentioned that. So I'm originally from Catalonia in Spain. So I grew up speaking Catalan natively, and then also Spanish. And I did all my education, secondary school, and the equivalent of A level. So before university, all in Catalonia. But then I applied to university in the UK and also in Catalonia as well. So I grew up speaking Catalan and Spanish, and then eventually learned English, and then moved to the UK for university.
Well, I guess with so many people's academic journeys, it started with one very good teacher. I was a French teacher of mine back when I was in senior school, and I would have been about 13 or 14, and he really inspired me to get into languages. Prior to that, being English, I had the usual English opinion that foreign languages are a waste of time. And thanks to this one very persistent and very engaging teacher, I really got into them. That's what I think of as the start of the journey, but it was a very long process. People come to linguistics by all sorts of routes. It can be a very meandering, very vague journey. Sure. And I think I actually only settled on linguistics shortly before starting university. Really, I had a vague idea what it was. I knew I wanted to do something that combined languages and history and culture, but linguistics, that was something that took a while.
Okay.
That took a while, yeah. When I got to university, I definitely remember the first term, the first week.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, this is for me.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it didn't traumatize you.
No, quite the opposite. I thought, yep, no. Any doubts in my mind, I've found
Perfect.
it, and I've never looked back since.
Okay. All right. Oh my god, that's so cool, by the way.
Yeah, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
It was a long time coming.
Yeah. All right.
Before I was a linguistics student, I was in teacher training, officially a teacher for the subjects English and German. And part of my teacher training was also training in linguistics, and that's how I got into it. Because before my teacher training, I wasn't aware linguistics even existing as a field, as a discipline.
That's a common thing here. Yeah.
I think in high school you don't really learn about linguistics and like the scientific study of language and what can be done with it. I had this moment like when I was in my third year of teacher training when I realized from one moment to the next, oh, I think I'm a linguist. I have to get more into this.
Okay.
So I really had this one moment that changed everything. Yeah.
Everything. Wow, I love that. So you were a teacher at first, but then did you finish your teacher training?
I did. So I would have to, in Germany, I would still have to complete like 18 months of practical training, but afterwards I would be an official teacher. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
That was such a cool answer.
So, in my high school, I liked so much languages, so I learned German and French. And when I went to the university, I just applied for French studies, German studies, and then history, which I loved a lot. And I was like admitted to all of these like specializations, and I didn't know what to choose. So the linguistics was like a hazard.
Like a risk.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It was like this.
Ooh, risky.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was like fortune, I guess.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you got into linguistics, but you didn't plan on doing linguistics.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Okay, and is it worth it? Was the risk worth it?
Yeah, it is definitely. I can't imagine I'm a historian or something like this.
Or you could be into historical syntax or something.
But I'm not.
Okay, you're not.
That's a funny thing because I didn't know linguistics existed in the first place in high school. But when I finished my high school, I had my Matura exams, and I thought, well, I do like languages, so I figured, well, English philology is gonna be more useful than Polish philology at the University of Wrocław. At least you gotta have a language that you specialize in,
I
right?
did that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then during my first year of studies, I found out that there is something like linguistics, and I fell in love, right?
Did you fall in love with descriptive grammar classes or the intro to linguistics?
Intro to linguistics, I think. But only from the second semester.
Okay. Yeah, because that started with semantics, I think? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
You're going to get the same response from everyone. How many languages do you speak?
How to speak properly.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
A sign or something that you think, oh, that's weird.
And the last question.